Hello there. Welcome to Keep This in Mind, brought to you by SpectHealth.com. And of course, I'm David A. Specht, and today is podcast day. That means, yes, I'm going to be bringing on an amazing guest onto the show. Friend of mine that I met back in, I think it was October. We were at a conference together. We really kind of hit it off as far as we were kind of pulling in the same direction, trying to impact lives and change mindsets. And his name is Jim Morris. He is a realtor in Nashville, one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. But that's really such a small part of his story. He came from the Boston area. He's lived a lot of life for his young age, as you can see him here on the screen. And his whole impact is to create a positive environment, to create, even he's the founder of Impact Social Events. He is changing the way people do networking. He's really got a lot of things under the hood. And Jim, I want to welcome you to the show. I'd love for you to kind of give a little bit of background of your story, because I think the fact that of what you've been through in your life, and a lot of it had absolutely, it was none of your fault. It wasn't a result of decision making on your part, but yet it still had a profound impact on you that you had to overcome, and you had to make intentional choices to move forward, or else it was going to hold you back. So let's go ahead and dive into that.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate you having me today. And I'm excited to share my story and hope that it touches some of your listeners in a positive way. Um, I do own Impact Social Events, and the word impact means to influence. And a lot of things in my life have occurred that I didn't have the opportunity to influence early on. So you kind of alluded to it, but you know, there's so many things that happen in the world, and there's so many negative things that can occur that we didn't construct or we didn't build. And for me specifically, that story or that situation is how I grew up. My parents being addicted to OxyContin, and I had a lot of struggles through my life to get into things and do certain things that I wanted to do. And when those things happen and those situations become present in my life, there's two situations that can occur, right? You can radiate positivity and be extremely intentional with your mindset, or you can allow those negative things to conquer your brain, conquer your mindset, and put you in a path that becomes something like a victim opposed to a victor.
Hmm.
So for me specifically, I've tried to be extremely intentional with my mindset and radiate that positivity in those negative situations that have occurred. And it not only starts when you're young and with parents and things of that nature, but it progresses all the way up until the present and until the future. And those negative things that are occurring and impacting your life, you have a choice to radiate positivity, be intentional, and conquer those things. And that's really what I focused on over the years. And now in my world today, where I throw events and conferences and build community, my goal is really to influence those people to have a mindset that's a positive, reinforcing approach to negative things that occur in this world, that occur to us. And those things, as I've progressed over the years, don't happen to me, they happen for me, right? And those opportunities lie in those negative situations. It's just how do we manage them? How do we stay positive? And how do we conquer those things in the crazy world, that we live in today?
Um, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, because what you say is absolutely true, and I wholeheartedly believe it, and I've heard about it, read about it. Especially the phrase "things don't happen to you; they happen for you." But I would have to say that there had to be an instance in your life where you were just like, either something's going to change or I'm done. There's that one moment that changed your life forever because you were in a situation. It's not like, oh, I decided to be negative, or I'm living a negative life. You were in a situation in a lot of ways that was beyond your control. I think about the I forget who coined it, but they said, you can't there between stimulus and response. There is a decision that can be made, and that the decision is how you will respond. You had one of those moments, or probably a whole host of them. But do you know if there was a defining moment that really opened your eyes? Maybe somebody said something to you, or did something for you, or just really awakened you. What was that defining moment for you?
Well, I think for me specifically, it was 2005. Um, and I can't remember who said this to me, but someone said in passing, you have to hit rock bottom to truly understand. And I remember like putting that on my MySpace, right? Back in the day. Um, and it was something that really stuck with me because when you go through those things and you put yourself in those situations at a young age with family, you're eating. I mean, I remember we had cereal with water instead of milk, right? I never really understood it until I really hit that rock bottom. Because for me, once you're there, it's like, okay, there's only so much lower you can go. And you position yourself to say, okay, well, I don't want to do this. I'm done doing this. I'm sick of doing this. And I'm sick of just being in a state of mind where, you know, I'm not doing anything to progress or to position myself out of that current state. So once I really understood and felt that I hit rock bottom, I was like, okay, how can I get out of this and how can I change? And it really starts with the mind. It
Mm,
really starts with just, okay, this isn't every day I'm losing. It's I'm making progress. I'm trying to grow. I'm doing things that I know are going to be positive for me in the future, but they may not be transformative today or in the time period I want.
mm,
But once you're at that bottom, it's like, hey, there's only one way to go, and it's got to go up, or I'm going to die, right? And
right.
and at that point, at 15, 16, 17 years old, it's like, no, I'm not giving up. So
So,
that'd be my pivotal point, David, of just really understanding where you're at and going, okay, I'm really low. I don't want to be like this. What am I going to do to get out of it? And it's been amazing for me because that started at such a young age and has transformed in so many different ways throughout my life. At age 33 right now, where I've gotten beat down and I've had to continue to get up. And I've had amazing things happen and I've had them taken away from me almost immediately.
mm,
You know, I've written on the vision board that I'm going to be on Forbes and I'm going to be a billionaire and we're making our first million in the company I started, and then COVID happens, right? My whole business is gone. I break up with the partnership, I sell it, and I have to start over and I have to start a new concept. And I can look at that and say, oh man, COVID, and be a downer about it and be upset about it and be frustrated. But the fact of the matter is I got an opportunity to recreate. I
mm,
could go make a company. I could go make a concept. And that's where you find me transitioning from the first business into the event business, right? Because I'm like, I hate events. They suck. They're boring. The speakers suck. They're not paid. So the speakers are just doing this for free and they don't really have great education that they're bringing. And it's awkward and everybody's giving me business cards and no one even cares about my name, and I asked two people what my name was, and they forgot immediately. But they gave me a business card and told me I should buy insurance from them. Like I'm like, there's got to be better ways. So for me, when you talk about like do it for you, I didn't believe that. I thought it was bullshit forever.
mhm,
And the reality of it is like no. Once you get through those dark times and back to light, you kind of look back on it and you're like, well, if I decided to start an event company 2 years prior, I probably would have failed. I didn't have a good mindset. I was doing it all for Jim Morris, not for the community, not for others, not for entrepreneurs, not to help people. I was probably going to do it for me. So I'm glad that I didn't do it at that time. And I'm glad I had to go through these trials, tribulations, whatever you want to call them. I call them straight failures,
Hmm.
right? Just because COVID happened doesn't mean I can play blame game and point to COVID. I failed. I should have had a backup plan, right?
Right.
I should have had biological warfare as a threat to my company. I didn't. So, you progress through all these situations. And for me, I'm not just someone who reads an article or hears a quote and lives by it, and dies by it. I store it, I think about it, I like it. How does it fit in my world? That quote you brought up, doing stuff for you instead of against you, it took 12 years to realize that, you know, and I had to see the light at the end of those tunnels in order to, I think, come around to that concept and believe, right? I
Mm-hmm.
had to have faith that I am smart, I am making good decisions, I'm doing the right things for the right reasons with all the imposter syndrome, all the failures, and all the negative things in this world, right?
Oh, yes,
To
yes.
radiate positivity in a negative world.
So I want to go back to something that you said, your MySpace quote, about you have to hit rock bottom before you'll understand. Do you think, and I hate asking yes or no questions, but I'm going to anyway. Do you think the fact that you hit rock bottom in your personal life, in your own life, in your circumstance, made you less afraid of failure because you've already experienced what you perceive to be the worst you could experience?
I do, yes. And the reason why, and I know you asked me a yes no question, but I'm going to dive a little bit into it. Um, it allowed me to realize every single time my back has been up against the wall, I've fought my way out of it over and over and over again. And understanding that has allowed me to go back and dig deeper into a lot of stories and situations that happened over my life
Hmm.
time, right? And really figure out all those situations where my back was against the wall and I prevailed. I got out of it. Great things came of it. Maybe sometimes great things didn't come from it. Maybe it was just a learning lesson that I didn't realize for years later down the road. But it really put me in a situation to think back and write down all these stories that have happened in my life, all these negative, bad things. And man, David, I've got 4 pages on my iPhone of negative, bad things. And quite
Hmm.
honestly, some did happen because of my decisions. A majority of them did happen because of my decisions. But there is a reality in this to say that 20, 30% I had no control over.
Hmm.
And to go through that process of really writing down situations and stories and negative things that happened, one, it allowed me to overcome it a little bit better because I wrote it out on paper. I relived the emotion and the
Hmm.
feelings surrounding it. But more so, it allowed me to give reference and examples of how many times negative things have happened. And I've been intentional about my mindset, made sure I was positive and worked through it for success.
Um, what you're talking about really reminds me of something that I saw on TikTok, of course, that we're always scrolling, right? But it was something that Tom Hanks said in a meeting with a bunch of actors. They were sitting around a table. And he said, one of the most powerful phrases in the world, if people can grab a hold of this, is this too shall pass. He said, everything going great? Be ready, this too shall pass. Are you at the darkest part of your life? Or things going wrong, the wheels are falling off? This too shall pass. And really and truly, I think people in general don't see the world that way. Everything is either sky high or low low, right? It's either I'm on top of the world or I'm in the midst of crisis. And for me, I believe that the way we think about things and the way we handle that stimulus, it really does define how we come through it. Because you're going to come through everything, whether you come through, as a victor or a victim, you're still going to
Yeah.
come through it. So you talk about radiating positivity. That you've got to have bad days, man. You've
Oh,
got to have times when you don't feel like radiating positivity. What do you do on those days when, the best thing you'd want to do is go kick somebody's dog or something? How do you bring about that positivity when you really don't want to?
100%. There are many days. Most of the time, things don't go well for me during the week. If I really wanted to sum it up, you know, um, tons of things happen negatively.
Well, you're in the
But
real estate space. Let's be honest with you. There's a hiccup on every deal that's just a pain in the rear to deal with. So that's why I asked the question.
so I have to balance this, and I use my wife as my accountability partner. So whenever I'm feeling negative, whenever something is going wrong, I just start telling her, and I just let it out in a negative way, right? Oh, my Facebook got hacked. It's the second one. Someone actually hacked my computer, got all the passwords, spent $1,000 on Facebook ads. I lost a real estate deal, lost 10 grand the next day, right? Like all these things happen, and I just bitch to my wife, and she reminds me, radiate positivity. You talk about this, you live this, you speak about it, you help entrepreneurs breaking into the entrepreneurial world. You live in this stress. So for me, I too need someone to help me. And it really comes back down to just my position on life about people. We need people. We don't need products and we don't need services. We need people because at the end of the day, if all the money and all the barter and the trade and all that went away, we could still live happy lives if we had great relationships. And we would help each other through those negative times because we need people. So for me, of course, I have bad days. I'm taking a ton of risk in a lot of my businesses right now. I'm trying new things. I am getting extremely uncomfortable. I'm spending dollars where I've never spent dollars in any of the businesses I've owned in the last 5 years. And
Mm.
I'm not winning always. I'm trying it and I'm losing money. But for me, I want to be able to give it an A effort. I want to try these things because if I try five things, I know one thing is going to progress and propel my business. Those other four things I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn either to never do it again, to tweak it, or to do it better. Right? But for me, I use an accountability partner, which happens to be my wife, because there is anybody who says they're happy all the time, anybody who says they don't have bad days, bad thoughts, negative feelings, I'm calling your ass out. I think that's a lie. I think you're lying to everybody and you're playing in fairy tale land and it doesn't exist, right? Whatever you believe in, God, the devil, nothing, uh, whether you associate with religion or don't, you have negative thoughts that come into your brain and you
Absolutely.
have positive ones. Where they come from, you decide, but you have to decide what to do with them and allow them, in your brain, recognize it, and then make a change or make a positive thought. Coach Burt, mentor of mine, he always says you can't have a negative and a positive thought at the same time. I'm sure, David, you've heard him say that.
Hmm.
So when you're having a negative thought, think of something great. Think of
Yeah.
something positive, right? And if you've got to go back to the negative. This isn't just, oh, I think of rainbows and butterflies and I'm happy now,
Right.
right? But you got to work through that. You got to put that effort into it. Dolly Parton says you can't get the rainbow without the rain,
Mm.
right? So she's identifying there's a negative, and whatever you do with it can turn into this amazing positive. And sometimes you have to go through those things to get to the other side. And
Yeah.
you got to go through it, right? You were talking about it shall pass, but you got to get through it. How you get through it is how you decide and how
Absolutely.
you perceive. And
So.
another thing I'll say, David, you
Mhm.
reminded me of just now. I actually had lunch with a buddy yesterday over at the country club, and he was telling me one of the best things that he's lived by is, you know, you're either in a storm, you're either coming out of a storm, or you're prepared to go back in a storm.
Absolutely. It's true, and I've heard that phrase as well. Um, yeah. Now I'm going to really kind of put you on here because you're a new dad. In fact, your wife was very close to giving birth when we met, and I would venture to say that life with a baby has affected your positivity radiation, if for nothing else, due to lack of sleep. Um, here's a serious question. I believe 100% like you do. What happens in our life is for us, and and the adversity we face builds the character within us. But I know this, as a parent, I don't want my children to face the same adversities that I faced. Right? You do want to shelter them. You do want to protect them. But as a parent, I really want your thoughts on this because you and I are a slightly different generation. Slightly different generation. About, okay, so my child is growing up in this crazy world that we live in, but I want them to radiate positivity because that's the lessons I want to turn. I'm sure this has kept you up at night. What are some of the things that you feel like, okay, these are maybe two, three, four, five things? Because I believe, regardless of how you, whether it's your child, your team, your editor, there are certain things in that leadership role that you've got to bring to the table, and you do have to let people experience some things that will build their character as well. What are some of your thoughts there?
Well, I think having a child really um, puts perspective into who I am, how I look at things, because at the end of the day, right, they're perceiving those actions more than potentially those words that come out of my mouth, right, child. Um, but I think for me, honestly, I've really tried to identify triggers. I think, we need to know what triggers us so then we can identify it and then position ourselves to respond positively. So I think for our child is we've got to identify those things early on. And I think having open communication with our child about that. Hey, you were frustrated, you threw a tantrum, you were crying, right? Why? How did you feel? And what caused that? I think just having those very adult emotional conversations is probably the path that we're going to take with our child. And it's tough, right? Because our child doesn't talk now and she's 7 months tomorrow. But, we start to see certain patterns. And I think we just need to really identify them and then treat our child as if they are adults and realize, okay, what's causing this and making sure we know those triggers. Because I think for me, triggers are real. And like whenever I'm taking a lot of risk and I'm outsourcing something in my business and something goes sideways, it's an immediate trigger where I just think that everything's negative and I think that all these bad things are going to come down the road and all these things. But I had to identify that in my business that whenever I'm trying something new, I can't let this trigger
Mm.
take over and make me in this negative assumption. Just because I'm not doing it, I don't have my hands on it. I'm outsourcing it, right? You know, I need to realize those things, and that is a huge trigger for me. So once I realized that, it's like, okay, I identified it. I'm like, Jim, they missed some. They didn't send no, and a 5 minute delay. Like that doesn't mean everything's falling apart, and I need to go negative, and I need to think about interviewing a different company and the conflict resolution when I discuss and bring up the right. Like we didn't even need to get there, and through that process of identifying triggers, I've identified that if it's a trigger and it's happening, I start creating a story that's not real.
Mm. Right.
And then I have worry, anxiety, negative emotion. And the only person that knows that story is me.
Right.
I've never shared it, right? Because I just create it in my mind and I think of all these things that are going to happen. And the reality of it is that doesn't even happen. I'm the only one that knew it. And I had all this negative emotion, anxiety, and
Mm.
stress about it. And it didn't even happen.
Mm-mm.
So if I can identify, if I can say one thing that's been helpful for me, and I hope will be helpful for my child is really just identifying those negative emotions, what triggers them, and how to just realize they're occurring and not let that trajectory of maybe making up a story that's never even going to come to fruition or real in our brains occur because those usually drive the negative emotion.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm evidence of that a lot of times, right? It's like the 3 a.m. email from some random place that you happen to look at it at 5 when you get up, and it just you don't get to the office till 8. And so now you have 3 hours to concoct a completely fabricated story in your head, until you address the actual facts that are in front of you. So yeah, you're right. It's not a say it once and you're done and you're over it. As a closet overthinker,
Yeah,
you have to continually stifle and remind yourself that this is not true. You're just playing scenarios. Quit it. Quit playing the scenarios until you find out what the actual truth is.
totally. Totally.
Okay, time to pivot to business, because you said something early on that really kind of parlays into this question, and that is events suck. Networking events suck. And look, I'm an extroverted introvert. In other words, if you engage me and you get me engaged early on, man, I'm right there. But if it's just like you walk in and there's a room full of people and nothing but business cards, you're just like, I don't want to be here. Where's the exit? Where's the free drinks? Whatever. So you saw this gap, and coming out of COVID, you're like, okay, people are apprehensive anyway in person. Let's figure out how we can serve this public. Kind of tell me the story of impact social events, and what makes them different from what you saw to what you're actually hosting.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, Impact Social events started during COVID. I'm the crazy guy who starts an event company when there's no events. Um, and that's really why I started it. You know, I had the vision that the big box companies were going to crush the little guys. And I was still a little guy. I was 1 year in business, and we had an amazing year and we had an amazing trajectory for year two. And I was super excited. And then it all kind of got wiped away. So, what I did was go, okay, I hated going to networking events. I thought they sucked. They were all the same. There was no real connection being made or deep connection. You see a lot of the same faces. They look miserable. And I'm like, okay, we can do this better. But the reality of it was, I really just got a bunch of entrepreneurs together because I knew our businesses were going to die. And I knew that there was no cash influx that was going to save us. And the whole goal was really just to share contacts. So it was very intentional in the beginning because it was a lot of like-minded folks struck with the same struggles and the same level of vulnerability. We're all honest that we were screwed, you know. And I think when you put the honesty, vulnerability, and collaboration in a room, that's when you have real conversations, authentic conversations, emotional conversations, and the whole goal was to help each other get through this period. Fast forward several months later, and we throw an event, and it's massive. It's like 150 people. It's on a rooftop in downtown Nashville. We had photographers, so you'd come in, you'd get a photo, you'd get some content. We had videographers, and I wanted to do something special. And I was sick of everybody just, here's a free beer, one glass of wine, here's a ticket. So I was like, I'm just going to buy everybody a glass of champagne. We're going to do a champagne toast. And that's going to be the signature thing we do that's different, that drives people's initial attention, right? My whole thing was, how can we market this to get people to come of quality? Because the whole goal is putting the right people in the room that are doing things and want to do bigger things and
Mm-hmm.
want to help other people grow. So I'm like, how do we attract more people? So we just did some unique things like that. We had the 360 camera, so you can get a quick video with a friend doing fun things, post it on your socials. Um, One of the other things that we did was no business cards. So when you come in, we explain that you can't just pass out business cards. We'll ask you to leave if we see you transitioning with business cards, because the whole goal is we wanted you just to meet two new friends. Come meet two people that you like, you've enjoyed, It's natural. You've asked enough questions that you're willing to share your contact information as if you met him at a bar seat downtown, sitting next to you, right? You'd give a stranger after 45 minutes of real, honest conversation your phone number, but you don't want to give it to someone in a networking setting. What's the difference? What's the psychology behind it? And that's really what I tried
Mm,
to break down. The other thing that we did was we brought people into the event. So we had 4 or 5 people at the front. We heard what they did. We asked questions. We kind of did a discovery call with them without
mhm.
them knowing from a sales perspective. And then we brought them into the event. We aligned them with people we thought would be a good introduction. So we just took a little bit of extra unique steps. And now we're transitioning because I feel that networking events are amazing, but I want to give back to the community and I want to help educate them and grow them. So we started doing educational events where we bring in a speaker, we do the photos, still the same networking in the beginning and the end, but we have a real amazing hour of curriculum and then one-to-one Q&A to where you can interact with the speaker and engage.
Wow. You know, I love the concept, and it talking about triggers. You know how certain things just trigger memories in you, and you hear a phrase or a song or a smell. When you were talking about talking to somebody at the bar and telling them your life story, why not do that at a network event? It reminded me of so many seminars that I went to, especially in the newspaper business. You go to the seminar, you're all sitting behind the little tables, you know, you jot your notes, you're not talking to anybody. But then that night at the hotel lobby where everybody's staying, you randomly talk to somebody you saw, you don't know why, and all of a sudden you have this conversation. And it was really kind of the same thing when we met. We were at an event, you know, it was a little bit more, you know, close, but you and me and several, about what, 3 other people are sitting around the same table. You know, we might have been making fun of a few people in the room. That's just the nature of some of us who see the world a different way. But the truth of the matter is that the value in that event wasn't so much what the speaker was giving us, but it was those connections and learning more about each other from a standpoint of, like, you know, you start a group text together with 2 people that you met and you keep that
Yeah.
conversation going or whatever. And for me, that has really been beneficial. As somebody who moved from Louisiana to Tennessee and have had to like reestablish relationships, you know, from, you know, at the age of back then 53, but you know, I'm middle aged to these people, you know, so it wasn't like this natural thing, right? I wasn't out beating the streets for sales or anything. It was like, okay, here's how do you connect? And you're right, that concept that you've come up with, while it's not quote unquote revolutionary, you're taking the best things of what I remember events to bring to the table, and you're making them more intentional.
Yeah. That's the
And
goal. That's the goal.
and that is just fabulous, man. I'm super stoked, and I will be the first one, you know, at the next event. Because I'm like you. I hate going to events. I hate walking to a room where I know absolutely nobody, and then it's my job to try to figure out who I need to meet. So you've lowered the resistance threshold there, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it.
as we wrap it up today, I know there's going to be people that want to follow you. There's going to be people that want to reach out to you. There's going to be people that want to know about the events as well. I mean, we've covered a lot of bases in our visit today. Tell us how people can follow you, get a hold of you. What are some of the best places?
Yeah. Instagram, the real Jim Morris. Jim Morris on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on those 2 handles. Um, you can go to my website, jimmorrisrealestate.com. I also have therealjimmorris.com as well. And then anything for our events is going to be impactsocialevents.com. And then we also, I kind of talked a little bit about revitalizing networking events, revitalizing educational events. Now we're revitalizing conferences.
Ooh,
So we have a movement starting October 27th, the impact effect. So I talked a little bit about Impact meaning influence, effect meaning result. We want to influence results for our attendees. So you can find information about that coming up here in Nashville at impacteffect23.com.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, we'll have all that in the show notes for those of you who are on the treadmill and can't take down notes while you're listening, and certainly those of you driving don't have a wreck. So, Jim, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think that this has been not just valuable for the listener, but I gleaned so much out of our conversation today, and really kind of helped reframe some of my mindsets as well. So, thank you again for being on. Looking forward to what the future holds for all of us. And as we wrap it up today, guys, I just want to encourage you. Knowledge is not power, guys. You need to apply that knowledge. And what you've learned today to reframe your mindset, to understand how things work for you, and understand that you're going, anything you go through, whether positive or negative, you have the ability to choose how you respond to it. So I encourage you, apply this knowledge, because applied knowledge is power. God bless.